We're now joined by Arsalan Iftikhar, who is a human rights lawyer and founder of the MuslimGuy.com. He's joining us now this morning from Washington, D.C. to continue our discussion about the appointments there of U.S. aide, the Religious Freedom Advisor, Mark Lloyd, as well as the advisor or the Undersecretary of Defense nomination, for policy in the Department of Defense, General Tata. Both of these, of course, Trump appointees with troubling social media posts about Islam in the past. Arsalan, thank you for your time this morning and for joining us. What do you make of the statements of both Lloyd and Tata in the past, Islamophobic statements, quite obviously? Their removal, as the moment that came out into the open, can they still serve in their respective positions and not have those Islamophobic views affect how they do their jobs?
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be sort of put into context, Waqar, is the fact that this is obviously a long line of Islamophobic appointments by the Trump administration and by Donald Trump himself. I mean, let's not forget that Donald Trump was a president who, during his own candidacy, said that I think Islam hates us in an interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper. He actually started the 2011 birther controversy against Barack Obama, saying that maybe Barack is not releasing his birth certificate because it says that he's a Muslim. Even before Mark Kevin Lloyd and Tata, he has surrounded himself with a litany of Islamophobic advisors like Stephen Bannon, who once said that Islam is not a religion of peace, or Sebastian Gorka, who said that violence is a fundamental part of Islam, or even his national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who once said that Islam is like a cancer. So, obviously this is just part and parcel of what's going on in the Trump administration today, even at the lowest levels like, Mark Kevin Lloyd and Tata. It's... Obviously, with Mark Kevin Lloyd, serving as a religious freedom advisor who is disparaging the second largest religion on the face of the earth, and Tata, who is operating in the Defense Department, it's obviously very troubling because of the fact that both USAID and the Pentagon deal very much with Muslim majority nations. Since out of the 196 countries on earth, 57 of them are Muslim majority nations. And so obviously it doesn't do much to build any sort of trust between the United States right now and the Muslim world, and really the greater international community at large as well.
Indeed. So, I mean, that's my next question about policy making, right? Because especially when we're talking about the Pentagon, one would imagine that even though General Tata is would just be the Undersecretary of Defense, that's still a significant position. I mean, he would still have a lot of people answering under him, and secondly, he would have a lot of influence over policies. Does all of this affect then how the U.S. Creates those policies for the Middle East, for example, where it is heavily, of course, involved?
I don't think so. Again, this is not the first time that the Pentagon has had Islamophobic officials. I mean, even during the administration of George W. Bush after 9/11, we dealt with a lot of undersecretaries. William Boykin was one of them, who was the undersecretary for policy as well, and was caught on video making very disparaging comments about Islam and Muslims during presentations at churches that he went to. And so sadly, this is something that we've become used to, how much influence these people have. I'm less worried about, some no-name undersecretaries that I am national security advisors who are in the West Wing, Steve Bannon, who was the, chief political strategist. I mean, these are the people who have Trump's ear on a daily, if not hourly basis. And so, like I said, it literally shows that Islamophobia has become completely foundational to the Trump administration, and more importantly, to the Republican Party writ large today. Oftentimes people forget that even though Donald Trump was elected president, when he was running for office, when he was in the Republican primary, there were 16 other Republican candidates who were running against him, and they were all trying to out-Islamophobe each other. You had people like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who said that, Sharia law is a mortal threat to the United States. You had people like Ben Carson, who are now serving in the Trump administration, who said that he would never appoint a Muslim or a Hindu as a federal judge, for that matter. The racism and xenophobia has become part and parcel of the Republican Party today. And it's important for us to call it out when we do see it with people like Tata or Mark Kevin Lloyd. But sadly, it's no longer a surprise to anyone who operates here in the Beltway.
So then how does one overextend, right? Because certainly Donald Trump can't do all of the above or wouldn't have gone down this path, this Islamophobic path, if he didn't know that his base supported him when it comes to those views.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Waqar. And I think the key is, again, to keep media pressure. The more coverage there is on people like Tata, Kevin Lloyd, obviously Sebastian Gorka and Bannon are no longer there because of the pressure, right? Because of all the coverage of their racist, Islamophobic statements. The more coverage there is, I'll be honest with you. Religious freedom advisor to USAID is a no-name position. Again, 99% of Americans could not name a religious advisor to USAID, but because it's been in the spotlight, in the media, airwaves, for the last couple of weeks, hopefully it puts pressure on internal bureaucrats. What you hope is that sort of lifelong civil servants within USAID, within the Pentagon, will convince them to have cooler heads prevail and remove these nominations. I'm not holding my breath with anything that comes from the Trump administration, but again, the longer it remains in the zeitgeist, the longer that it remains, in the news cycle, I think the more likely we are to get some sort of pushback. Obviously, because of the fact that nobody wants to be called a racist, even though our president is a racist, but nobody wants to be called that. And so I think that the more pressure that we put on the administration through this media coverage, Trump likes nothing more than positive media coverage. And so, and that's the key to this, is that when he sees this sort of, negative meta narratives, not only against him, but his administration for being xenophobic, racist, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, these are the things that hopefully will, cause some change.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there at that, Arsalan, but we do sincerely appreciate you taking your time out of a busy schedule to speak to us this morning. That was Arsalan Iftikhar speaking to us this morning from Washington, D.C. Now, viewers,